Technology changes so fast in business. It's forever being updated. There's always something new and amazing coming out. Sometimes we forget how impactful technology really is and how much we depend on it for various areas of our business and running our business. The impact of technology is one that is ever evolving, and we are evolving more and more to become more and more dependent on it, and for the better, I might add. I mean, there's some amazing tools and softwares out there that can radically help you reduce a lot of unnecessary workload, labor, stress, time, finance, so on and so forth. In this episode, we're talking specifically about the impact of technology in modern business. I'm sure you guys have got a lot of experience with this. I know we deal day to day with companies that, we try and help them implement various technologies, from things like websites all the way through to, CRMs and email marketing tools and all these kind of things. And that's only scratching the surface. I'm sure you guys have got some amazing experiences, and we'd love to hear them. So after listening to this podcast, please jump into the Facebook community, guys, and leave us some comments. Or if you see this pop up across any of your threads, then I'd love to hear what your experiences are. Enjoy the show, guys. Look forward to hearing from you soon. Ciao. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones. I'm your host, and you are joined today with my man, Aaron Salow, out of XOI in the United States. Aaron, welcome.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
And I managed to pronounce your name right.
You did.
Okay, good. Now, we're talking today about communication in the trades. Obviously, we have a lot of contractors and tradies around the world that listen to the show. And in my experience, communication is the one thing that'll solve 99% of problems. I've said it a million times on the show, and I'll stick by it. From the point of managing expectations over the phone call with the initial contact point with the client, right through to handing over a job, onboarding customers, all these kind of things. There's always work that could be done in improving the way that we communicate, in my experience. And I'm pretty excited today to be speaking to you about something that you know a lot about. Do you want to give us a quick run through, Aaron, on XOI and a bit about your background and how you ended up where you are?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to do that. Grew up in Michigan, state well known for their automotive blue collar background here in the United States, and grew up as a young boy in that state, working on cars and motorcycles, and learned how to get dirty. I always say my rule was, which kind of explains where I'm from, is you had to, work on your own car. You had to drive a stick, which I don't think a lot of people can drive a stick anymore nowadays. And
not in America, but in Australia, I think most people do.
Yeah, I bet there's too many guys my age in their 30s that have never driven a manual before. It's pretty sad, but and so I think all that to say, my parents and grandparents were farmers. I mean, they taught me at an early age to have a lot of professional pride and working with your hands. Something you should be proud of. A lot of kids in my generation didn't, and created a pretty big problem for us. And I think a global problem, which is people turn their nose up at being an electrician, a plumber, HVAC tech, and created something we all kind of come to know as a skilled trades gap. So my career was in manufacturing construction, and started a company to address the skilled trades problem I was having in my own businesses 7 years ago. So myself and two co-founders, just a bunch of blue collar dudes, decided to try to do something about the problem. Excited to be here with you today, and our software is hopefully helping contractors do that.
So not a tech background, but learning as you go kind of thing. I can relate.
I learned how to hire dudes a lot smarter than me to build that.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I know it's funny, isn't it? That whole mindset. I mean, the whole point of the Site Shed podcast from the beginning was to dispel the myth that entering into a trade or the blue collar niche should be a fallback option, which is typically conveyed to you at school and university and that kind of thing. And then we enter into these like a global pandemic, and who are the people that are still working? the guys that have the blue collar trade certificates,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think there's
that literature degree is, and that Starbucks job you got as a result isn't working out
right.
too hot right
Yeah,
now,
exactly. Yeah.
huh? Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of, there's been a lot of conversations about how, what a smart option it is, especially of late in the community, because a lot of these guys haven't, most of our clients, to be honest with you, over at Tradie Web Guys, most of them have actually got busier. All of a sudden, you've got people that have been sent home from university, work, school, whatever, and there's twice as much load on the services in the house, and the lights are going out, and toilets are blocking up, and all this kind of stuff, and the guys just getting hammered busy. So never waste it.
Redefining what essential services means, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't remember
Right.
who said it, but it was somebody somewhere I read. Somebody said, "Oh, you never waste a crisis." Like never waste a crisis. Like there's a lot of opportunity that come out of this crisis.
I like that.
But anyway, we're segueing. So in this podcast series, I should say, we're talking about creating the ultimate communication framework within your business. This is part one. In part one, we're going to be talking about, I suppose, the impact of technology in modern business. And we've had quite a lot to do with this over the years, I suppose, from a digital point of view, because we are constantly helping business owners evolve into the digital space through their websites and through various digital marketing channels, through adopting technologies within their organization that can help them streamline processes and, I suppose, increase efficiency in the way they run their day-to-day operations. So I'm thinking that this is going to be a conversation that will be very well received with our audience out there. For all of you guys out there as well that are listening to this, just so you know, this is also a video podcast, and you can view it over at the Facebook page, or if you're in our private Facebook group, you can go and check it out there as well. And if you're not in there, you should be in there, because there's 6,000 global business owners just like you that are all there willing to learn. There's some awesome conversations that happen in there. Of course, it's going to be on YouTube and all the rest of it. Adam, so we're talking about the impact of technology in modern business. I suppose fundamentally, when we're like, technology in business today is evolving so rapidly, it's kind of hard to keep a finger on the pulse with everything that's coming out. I'd love to hear how, I suppose, your experience as to where you saw this gap and how you decided to fill it, and what the difference is between, I suppose, what problems you guys are trying to essentially solve.
I think when you think about, technology, a couple different questions are, I think, what technology in general and to contracting businesses, and then communication, further from there. I think it's important that you look at first kind of the inherent mystery that most of these trades are to most consumers, whether it's residential or commercial. They don't understand what they're paying for, right? Which means there's a high level of trust that has to be built, a reputation that has to be built. And so that is kind of a cornerstone of this industry. And I think it's pretty common. I can't tell you how many customers, contractors, people we talked to over the years that, their facilities manager's not getting on the roof with them. They're not going to the mechanical space with them. They may, it's working on the residential side. They may have stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, whoever, but there's always another decision maker, right? Who's getting a phone call or text message saying, this dude covered in tattoos that just got done burning a heater outside is telling me I owe him $800 more. And the guy's going, yeah, get 2 more quotes, right? And so you kind of think about the perception of that. It's like a lot of industries that have inherent mystery. Automotive is another great example. And I use this story because it's such a good signaling of what's happening. But I get a video now, the underside of my truck, when I go get an oil change, right? So it's not just a guy coming up going, hey, here's the 12 things you should do. And I'm going, yeah, did you change the oil? Leave me alone. You're getting to this point where you're like, hey, show me what's happening. So I think that cornerstone is what we're seeing is a reason why these pieces are impactful. But I also think there's something to be said about what a company has done to be successful today, and some themings there as well. So I think it's important that any technology, communication or otherwise, that you're looking at a business, has to really build on the foundations that got you there. I think reputation is a big piece of that, right? We talked about trust. I think making sure you have the strongest technicians, that aptitude of skilled trades is really key. Your overall team and their experience with the customer and the people in your office that are having those interactions are kind of the big 3. And I've been fortunate to talk to a bunch of owners over the years. And I always ask that question: what made you successful today? You've been in business 80 years, 40 years, 20 years. Why? And it's always a combination of those things. So I think if you look at that framework, when you evaluate any technology, and you could start to pick apart what's going to work and what's not by what's building on the ethos of got you here today, right? People trying to do things that are off that path are going to have varying results when it comes to technicians actually using it, customers caring about it, etc.
I mean, a lot of guys, a lot of listeners and viewers out there, and people that we speak to, quite regularly, have a bit of a fear about technology, and it's a conversation that I have to have regularly. Oh, I'm not good with websites. I'm not good with technology. I'm not good with this and that. And my answer to them always is, well, if you're trying to adapt and become a modern business, then at some point you're going to have to stop making these excuses, these fabricated fears up, and you're going to have to learn how to do it. And sure, you may not be great at it, which no one would expect you to be. I mean, I can to this day remember back maybe only a couple of years before I started my agency, having to go downstairs and ask my neighbor how to do something on my computer because I couldn't figure it out. And he was like, "Dude, you are the most useless prick I've ever met when it comes to computers." And I'm like, I know, I'm a plumber though. But now all of a sudden I'm running a digital agency and I've got clients calling me all day, every day asking for, even though we're not IT advice, it's something you can learn, right? So I love what you said as well about like the oil change example about guys sending you videos and that kind of thing, because one of the messages that I like to communicate to business owners, and something I've said a million times, is you're not in, like it or not, you are not a insert trade, plumber, a builder, electrician, whatever. You are in the education space. You are there to educate your customers, and you're there to give them information that they're looking for. And it becomes extremely relevant when you've got, products and services that, might be what we call a longer sales cycle, or something where, say you're a home renovation expert and somebody comes to you and they're researching home renovations, and that decision process could take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, who knows, but the person who's proactive in educating that customer throughout the time when they come to you and the time when they decide to sign on the dotted line, like, they're typically the people that are going to get the work. And we see it all the time. And so, like, you're saying, oh, okay, these guys are sending me videos of, to prove that, they're doing the work or whatever. But I'm saying, well, these guys are, like, whether they know it or not, they're actually creating useful content, and they're educating, and they're in the education space, and they may not even know it, but they're actually doing probably a better job than most at it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've had some interesting stories along that path, because there's guys that, we had this one story. It's one of our favorite a few years ago. A guy, he laughed every time he talked about money with a customer. It was almost like a nervous tick. He'd be like, so, I looked at it. This is going to cost you $27,000. And they're like, why are you laughing? This isn't funny at all. That's a ton of money. He just had this weird thing. And so he used, our video content to talk through it on the roof. He's a commercial guy. And he would give it to the customer, and he would say, there you go. You take a look at it. I explained it. You can see everything. The reason I'm telling you got to replace that condensing unit or whatever. But we love that one. It's a funny one.
It's amazing. Yeah, so I think the ripple effect of technology is, I mean, and to be fair, we probably hardly scratched the surface of it in hindsight when you look at, areas of business that could potentially be further optimized with the use of technology. But I can see, even from the small little corner which we operate in when we're talking about technology within the trades, these tools can make a significant impact, and they do make a significant impact. From my experience, the bottlenecks often come from adoption. And so you've got these amazing tools and programs, and sometimes that can be both the good devil and the bad devil when it comes to the tool itself, because if they're not adopted and onboarded and trained the right way with the programs and the software, then very often we find that they never get used to their full advantage. The client stops using it, and then they blame the tool and say, no, it's a shit product. In reality, they just weren't equipped with the right tool, using the right training, and they never had the right onboarding process, to begin with. So they never really got a fair chance with it, which is a very similar conversation to the one we have around staff, hiring and recruiting and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, I suppose this specific area that we're talking about, I'd love to hear about where you foresee it heading. And I'd like to see, I mean, how would you like to see guys typically use it?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question, and it kind of piggyback on the point you were making about adoption. I think a lot of technology in this space to date, and over the last few years that's changing, wasn't built for the technician, right? And wasn't built for them. It was put on them. And so the perception of I have to do this thing because my boss is making me do this. I didn't come to this company to be a technology guy. I came to fix problems out in the field. So there's a natural tendency to look at it as just a pain in the ass, and that's pretty consistent with what you see. So I think, we kind of built core values or core traits as a company, and our number one that we have everywhere, we talk about all the time, is we put ourselves in our technicians' work boots. And sometimes we fail at that. That's the whole thing about a core value, is trying to do the right thing. But I think it's around how you build a product, how you serve product, how technicians use product. And so I think the key is to be able to point to things that make their lives better and have impact that truly makes their work life better. So when you talk about videos for the other flip side of giving this idea on the video side to customers so they understand it is also a nice cover your ass. You ask a technician how many times they've been accused of the he said, she said, because a customer said, I left the panel out, they left it dirty, I did this, I did that. Some of our favorite stories are guys that in the beginning, they start using the dark tool because their boss made them. They're like, this thing sucks, and they're complaining about it. And so they have a customer that calls and goes, hey, this jerk off did this thing, da, 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 da. And they go, oh, wait a second, I take those stupid videos my boss makes me take. They pull it up and go, this is how I left the job site, Yeah. So we don't market that because it's, in some cases, it sounds like the gotcha game. We say, hey, get in front of that call, right? It's not about I got your customer and I got you. See, I pointed it out. It's about going, hey, man, I do good work and I'm standing behind my work. The best blue collar people have a professional pride, right? There's something you can probably sense this. I felt this way when I worked in manufacturing. When I built something, I felt good about it. I want to talk about it. I want to point it out and go, look what I did, right? I fixed this problem. I think this is an opportunity to do that. So I think any technology, our technology or anything else, need to index on what's in it for the technician. How are they winning every day in a way that really truly impacts them? Not just a marketing ploy, but something where it says, yeah, I've had that problem and this helps me solve that problem. And I think you can apply that to a lot of technology.
And what in your experience are some of those problems that technology does make better from the point of view of a technician? I mean, let's just assume that we're dealing with a technician now that is willing to adopt the tool, and they haven't got their heels dug in. They're saying, no, it ain't broke, I ain't fixing it. We're talking to someone that's like, okay, let's remove some problems. What are some of the issues that you see?
Yeah, asset information is another big one, right? This industry, our industry specifically, and we serve the mechanical, electrical, plumbing space, mostly mechanical. People don't know what assets they have, and a big reason for that is you're asking a tech, an 130-degree heat index to take down a 29 character alphanumeric and type it in to a system. But dude, I'm sweating my ass off here. Like I just want to get to the next job.
Right.
And so you have this weird thing where people, 35 to 50% of their energy costs are in their HVAC system. It's a huge part of construction cost. Yet they have no idea what's on the roof. They don't know what's at their home. They don't know what's at the multifamily residential. And so, being able to ease things like asset capture, right? Being able to ease things like notes. That's another big thing technicians get harassed about all the time. It's like your notes stink. So there's technology out there now that can allow you to take a picture of a data plate and extract make, model, serial number to just simply speak in a piece of video content or otherwise, and you have really robust notes that are human audited, and you're done. I talked about the video example, not to have that he said, she said game, when you do a job, because this job for most people, uniquely, you're alone, right? You're on an island. So it's your word against theirs. And that can be a potential problem. And then also in the same way, exposing things like, why were you there for 8 hours? Because this is a huge problem. And here's why, or there was a safety concern. I'm not working on your site because it's unsafe for these reasons. And even though the person that makes those decisions is in a different state or city, I'm able to communicate those issues so I can be safe in a more effective way. So there's a ton that happens on a job. And I think in this space is unique in the fact that it's highly complex, mission critical. You're by yourself. You can't just, you can ring your buddy, but he's on another job. Google stinks. YouTube doesn't have the videos you're looking for, content you're looking for. So a lot of opportunities there, but those are just a few as an example.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see a lot of our audience community today are becoming more and more proactive in that space in there. And if I'm jumping ahead now, because I know in episode 3 we're going to be talking about how to streamline company process. So you just reel me in if I'm going too deep into something we're going to cover later. But I feel like when like a lot of these guys now are using a lot of job management software. So, Service Mate, Tradifiers, all these kind of project Simpros, so on and so forth. They're kind of enticing their technicians and making them go and do what you just said, take photos of the job. And before when you get there, so that if anything, hey, that scratch wasn't on that wall. Well, yeah, it was. Look, here's a photo of it before we started, this kind of thing, right? Which happens quite a lot. And I don't know if it's just because people are lying scumbags or because people are just people and they only see what they want to see when they want to see it. But
both.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm curious, like in my experience, it's a lot of companies the companies that are having success with it are the companies that have made it a trained and communicated part of their operating process. And until it becomes a part of the company process, like some technicians will do it, some won't. Some will do it on some jobs, some won't do it on other jobs. But until it's like in a black and white sort of rock up to the job and do A, B, C, D, and one of those steps is take photos or whatever it is. Like it just doesn't it just seems to not get done. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you also have to see whatever you're doing, whatever technology you're doing, kind of who it benefits. I think that's a critical piece as well that a lot of people don't look at as much as they should is, there's stakeholders in that journey. You got the technician themselves, you got their fellow technicians, should be a stakeholder as well. They're not, again, back to this concept of being on an island. What information could other technicians learn from? And could you build against the skilled trades problem? What is the customer experience as a result of this? And then what is the office experience as a result of the technology? I think a lot of technology you mentioned, you call them project management, but we kind of refer to them as field service management solutions or FSMs, same thing. They're very transactional, and they may have a lot of transactional value to the office. I want to get my dispatch. I want to dispatch somebody. I want to get field notes. I want to get an invoice out. I want to get relevant information. You put information in and we'll have a transaction. And they're typically kind of 2 stakeholder value proposition. We try to think about things in terms of, 3 stakeholder rule. There should be a use case that benefits at least 3 stakeholders in that chain we talked about, because we know that that's going to drive value and adoption and really be something that's built into the process. One of my co-founders talks about, enhancing processes or building new ones. I think that's kind of a rule of thumb as we think through those things.
That's interesting too, because I suppose with that sort of approach to process, you're also making people accountable to other people within the process, right? So
yeah,
I kind of like that. I think that's sometimes where some of these things fall over. And to be honest, I see it in my own business sometimes. I'm like, why didn't you process this? Well, I'm the only one that looks at it. Like, okay, great. Then what happens if you're not here, kind of thing? Like there's not that influence on how it relates and affects other people. So I think that's kind of a good approach.
One other interesting piece about that, Matt, is the technicians care more about what their customers think than they care about what their bosses think. Right. Those relationships are important to people in the trades. The people that see those customers again and again and again, they love being able to come down and go, I fixed the problem. I have this solution, whatever. That relationship in that moment is important to them. So if you get the customer engagement and you're using any tool that allows the customer to engage with that technician in a meaningful way and say, hey, what you did for me mattered today, that is much, much different from an adoption perspective and usage and a value perspective than my boss is on my ass all day to use this thing.
So with that in mind, when you're working with a company or a contractor or a technician or whatever, and say you're onboarding people with the new tool, like is your area of focus primarily, like when we're talking about impacts of technology, like what specific areas are you trying to impact as like initially in order to get the ball rolling? Like I'm guessing for a business owner, they're like, well, let's just show us the bottom line. But then you're like, well, no, hang on. That's really not what your technicians are going to buy into.
Yeah. And I think you can solve both, in the example of, the stakeholder question. It's like, how do I give my technician an opportunity to show their work, show the quality of what they do? How does that also translate to a business owner, to a differentiator? in the marketplace, being able to show people that we stand behind what we do. Again, go back to the ethos. We built our business on trust, integrity. Now we're going to prove it. It's going to be trust but verify, and so that's an opportunity for the business to win. Sales side is the same thing. Depending on the company, a technician is spiffed and has opportunity to earn more money based on providing good sales opportunities to their team.
Yeah. Okay.
Depends on the company, but if you make that process easy for them and they can actually close things because of the technician taking the time. We always talk about, we're big sports fans here. So I was using, analogies about sports, but more at bats, right? In baseball, you want more at bats, and then you want the percentage of those closes, or hits to be higher. How do I increase the at bats? Well, I make it not a huge pain in the butt to provide a sales quote in the first place so that we can get more of those opportunities. So I think there is certainly a symbiotic relationship, or can be, if you have that rule in mind as you're looking at technology.
I could introduce you to my friend in Florida, Ryan Groth, who's a sales trainer. You'd have a great conversation with him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He works with roofers primarily, but he's been on the show a number of times. He's a good dude.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, I mean, what else do we want to talk about here? I mean, what about some of the benefits that you've seen, I suppose, companies that you work with that they've experienced as a result of adopting technology, and let's talk about some of the positive impacts off the back of deploying said tool.
Yeah. So I think, from a service business perspective, we kind of talked about, those stakeholders and value for the tech and how that kind of plays. I think whether some of those places that we've seen it exposed, we've already discussed, but I think, one specific one that's worth mentioning that's really exciting. I think we'll get it in more sessions here in the next couple of episodes we do. But, when you see a guy in his 60s or 70s that has a bunch of back, knee, hip, all the surgeries and the pains, and he's not getting on the rooftop anymore, and he's able to express this craft that he's built over decades by using this. And for people, I guess, that are listening, I'm pointing to my brain versus this, right? Their hands, pretty powerful. And so some of my kind of almost can be emotional moments is seeing those virtual service centers that are created as a result, where there's guys in their 70s that are sitting in a nice, comfortable office chair with air conditioning, looking at a big flat screen TV and walking a 22-year-old through a problem, with our platform. And I think when you think about being able to put a virtual 35, 40-year veteran on the shoulder of your youngest people, that has obvious business impact. It has obvious impact to the customer when you get a young guy on and off a job site quickly and get them to be efficient. But I think it has a real human impact when you actually realize technology can support somebody to use their craft in a way different than just getting on their hands and knees and getting dirty and breaking their back, right? And I think that's something that's pretty powerful.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of guys that we speak to, sort of the slightly older demographic, they have this fear about, not leaving a legacy. They get to the point where they've got a successful business and so on and so forth, and they're making money, but then, we have conversations with them and they've got this fear about not going to be able to leave a legacy. And typically that's because they've been operating a business a certain way for such a long period of time, and it's been working, and it does work. But once they decide they want to exit, they haven't got anything in place that's going to facilitate an exit strategy for them. And very often, a lot of technologies will help that situation. Not entirely, but process and technology can play quite a significant role in that. And we see so many guys, people that we speak to now, they're so relieved because they can finally sort of see that there is an opportunity there for them to leave behind a legacy, pass the business on, bring someone into their position or a number of people in their position, and actually turn it into, like you just said before, take that intellectual knowledge and turn it into intellectual property, and train and facilitate and equip your team with it. And it's like this, and in my experience, it's twofold. There's this huge, overwhelming frustration and annoyance that they didn't do it earlier, and then there's this amazing relief that it's actually working.
Yeah, for sure. We have a great story of a guy who was on his way to retirement. He was doing live calls with his guys. We record those and document those so you can keep them. And then also training content. And he was tagging in the system everything with redneck secrets right in the South. He goes, boys, I'm about to retire. He goes, you want to figure out how to fix something? You just type in redneck secrets into the platform. It'll tell you how to get it done. It's one of my favorite stories because, to your point of legacy, he was kind of creating one, right? And business owners kind of think about this as well. They go, man, I got these guys that are going to retire soon. A library is freaking burning down every time they walk out the door. Right. How do I get this information and keep it? But I think to your point about legacy and mentorship, it's an opportunity for him to make his mark on that company and say, I'm always going to have a piece of training people moving forward and kind of leave a mark on this business, which is awesome.
And that's actually also an important point. Like a lot of people that we speak to, they think they want to get out of their business, but what they really want to do is get out of what they're doing in their business. And when you can provide a different platform for them, whether that's, okay, well, you don't like doing this and you want to sell and get out because you hate what you have to do day to day, which is fine, but let's find people to replace that so you can work on what you like doing. And that's often an amazing paradigm shift as well, when you see people actually doing things within their business that first of all, they're better at doing. So that becomes more efficient. They're bringing people in to replace them in things that they've been doing for decades, which they suck at. And now that's becoming more efficient. And all of a sudden you've got this enjoyable workspace and everyone's good at what they do. And I mean, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly like a revelation when that penny drops.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I have been uniquely unqualified for almost every job I've done at this company.
Me too.
So as I've watched people come in and do a much better job, it's a relief.
And you know what? I think like you and I, perhaps it's a little bit different because we came from blue collar and we ended up in like the tech space, if you want to call it that. But it's certainly relevant for a lot of tradespeople out there as well, because when they look at, the bad thing about, I suppose, being a small business owner is effectively you're wearing every hat on your organizational chart. And, essentially all of a sudden now you've gone from being an employee of a plumbing company or a builder or whatever. And now all of a sudden you've got to do all of your bookkeeping, you've got to do all of your accounts, you've got to do all of your invoicing. You've never been taught how to do this stuff, but all of a sudden you have to do it because you're the business owner. So it's unnerving and, it can create a lot of stress. And of course, through absolutely no fault of your own, it means that things aren't getting done properly because you have no idea how to do it. So you learn as you go. So I think, back to your point earlier in the conversation, aiming to be the dumbest person in the room was one of the best piece of advice I always got. If you can bring people in to do certain things better than you, then that's one less thing you've got to do, and they're going to do it better anyway, and they're probably going to enjoy it. So perfect, make it happen. All right, cool. Well, let's wrap this episode up. We're talking about the impact of technology in modern business. I feel like we could probably go on and talk about this for decades. And of course, it is an ever-changing area of business, technology. However, we're going to come back in the next episode. We're going to be talking about the technician's 3 lines of defense: workflows, knowledge base, and live calls. So for the listeners out there, Aaron, can they get hold of you? Best place through the website, xoi.io?
That's it. Yep.
Okay. There you go, listeners and viewers, xoi.io. If you need to email across, you can do that at info@. Let's wrap this up, mate. We'll come back with the next episode shortly. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.